Hello, my fellow extraordinary Americans. Welcome back to Extraordinary America. For today's episode, we have our guest, Brett Lade. Brett is a digital marketing expert and a seven-figure SEO agency owner with nearly 20 years of experience providing results for some of the biggest name brands like Marriott, Four Seasons, Hallmark, Nationwide, Progressive Insurance, John Deere, and many more. Brett has worked with small businesses to large corporations to make their marketing and bottom line more successful. He has developed SEO strategies and successfully executed them for nearly every industry. His company, SEO Outsourcing Inc., provides white label SEO solutions for marketing agencies and direct services to businesses in need of ranking higher Google search results. Brett came from relatively humble beginnings to become really successful in what he does, and his thoughts and actions are really inspiring. And I believe he's an extraordinary American, and that is why I introduced him as a guest for this show. Brett, are you there?
I am.
Hey, Brett, welcome to Extraordinary America. Thank you for being a guest on the show. How are you doing?
I'm well. I'm doing very good.
So, Brett, I know that you're an entrepreneur and you're an internet marketer and SEO expert. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your background, and how you got started?
Mhm. So I got started almost 20 years ago. March of 2023 will literally be 20 years of me being in the digital marketing space. When I initially got started, I wanted to find something that where I could do consulting work, and I had a conversation with my wife about new technology. Google hadn't even came out yet. There were a lot of meta search engines that existed on the internet, and I decided to go get into the consulting world because I wanted to work with small and medium sized businesses. I focused really, really heavily on that. And it just so happened there were some opportunities that came available in relation to digital marketing agencies. So every time I made a jump in my career, I, in essence, sold myself to a new position. So I went from a consultant to working with a very small agency in Missouri. And I sold myself a job with a company that was in the Midwest in Ohio. Did that for about 3 years and then got picked up by one of their competitors. Did that for a few years and then decided that I wanted to do business for myself. I got tired of making other companies millions of dollars a year in sales and bringing in 40 to $50,000. To me, that was just not acceptable. So I continued down that path. And then the most interesting part about my background in terms of our company is a number of years ago, my wife was working with a bank and she had gotten robbed at gunpoint, and it
Oh man.
created a ton of stress every time she'd go to work. As a result of that, we wanted to find something that she could do. So as I was working with these consulting agencies, we said, "Hey, let's create a new company where you can work and do your thing." She had experience in internet marketing as well. So we created a company, and then 2 days later she fired me because she didn't want to have any conflict of interest with our business. Needed to be two people to be an S corp. So she let me go. And then what I wound up doing is literally nights and weekends, I was making phone calls, sending out emails to web development companies all throughout the United States to see if we can get clients for her, because I didn't want her being in that environment any longer. Didn't want her worried about work, having stomach aches every single day. And that was the catalyst for us creating our internet marketing agency.
Wow. Yeah, that must have been really intense. Entire process of like just getting robbed at gunpoint. That must have been like a turning point almost, you know?
It was. The interesting thing is I just got tired of seeing her be so stressed. And she actually, before she quit her job, she actually she had a weird feeling in her stomach. And she took a very long lunch break, and she had been robbed twice. And this particular day, she decided, I'm going to stay in the break room for a little bit longer for whatever reason. And that day, the team did get robbed at gunpoint. That would have been the third time she was robbed, and it was very traumatic for the people that she was working with. So she knew that at that moment we needed to do something else. So that's really what led us to creating our company and building the brand. We got tired of having being in that situation, and we also got tired of making corporations tons of money and not being able to earn what we rightfully should have been earned.
It's interesting, how sometimes like deeply traumatic events or negative experiences could be the catalyst for growth and eventually like massive success in whatever we do. Because a lot of people, if they went through what you went through, they were just broken down and just given up on life. And then and then you just turn it all around. So that's really inspirational in that regard.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's one of the things that I think separates myself and other people from your average American. I mean, there are a lot of Americans who are happy with going to work, doing the same kinds of things, and getting paid the same amount of money, and they just don't have that higher set mindset, in my opinion, of being able to reach the goals that are already in their head. I truly believe that there are a lot of Americans who want to supersede what they're currently doing. They have the skill sets to do it, but they're just afraid to take the next step. And that leads me to one quick point. When I was working with my wife and we were building up our business, there came a point where the money that I was making from my agency job, and it equaled that of what we were bringing in with with her agency. And the moment that I made that switch, the interesting thing is this took place in 2008. You know what happened in '08 with the housing market, how that
Yeah.
impacted lots of industries. Well, there was this moment where I was thinking, okay, God, I either did the best thing or the worst thing, because when I made that move 2 months later, we lost 50% of our revenue because of that housing situation. So I thought either the greatest thing or the worst thing I ever could have done for my career, because now that money just evaporated. Now it took me about 6 months to get those clients, to get the revenue back from those clients. But that was one of those hardships. A second thing that we had to go through in terms of, hey, you got used to making a certain level of money, and then you finally decided to jump off the cliff and you had to parachute and you were going downhill. And then all of a sudden you realized there was a hole in your parachute because you can't control all factors within the economy. It was insane.
So, I've known you outside of outside of this interview, and you've gone through many hardships, and this is like some of the hardships that you've gone through. What was it that kept you going on in spite of all these adversities that were going into your life? Like, what made you like focus and keep on going at your business until you succeeded?
So a lot of that was from my father. He owned a construction company in Los Angeles, and I got to see him working in the sales industry. And I loved watching him go on these sales presentations. I loved watching him interact with people. And I saw him go through a tremendous amount of struggle between the summer times. It was always good. And the winter times were bad because of the rain. You can't lay asphalt paving in the wintertime in California because it's too cold. And it's just because it's a cold, wet feeling. So I got to see him go through a lot of struggles. And I always told myself, I want to be like my dad in that sense, to be able to go through and weather those storms. So part of it was my faith in my father, and part of it was just my faith in God, in being able to look at something greater than myself. I'd say that was the number one thing, being able to look at something bigger than who I am and being able to hold on to that and use that as motivation.
So, speaking of motivation, like a lot of times, like people don't have the motivation to go through adversity. Like they are not able to go through the endurance. Like, what was your greatest motivation to continue to keep going forward, even in the darkest times of your career?
Think a huge piece of that was just a lot of the things that were ingrained in me as a child. You know, as an American, as a business person, there are these things that I've learned, that I've heard about all my life, in terms of just making sure that you do what's right. You give something a true chance to see success or failure. And my dad always told me, give everything at least a year. And if you give it a year and things don't work out, okay, you at least are able to say you did your best. You don't come in and give it a month, give it a week, and then cry about why you didn't achieve your objectives. No, give it a full year. So that was part of it. And I think a huge part was just this tenacity that has grown in me, in terms of being able to just achieve what I want to be able to achieve. I think that's a huge part of it. And I just, another part is just having that mindset that you're going to achieve your objectives regardless. You're either going to kill me or you're going to give me what I want. There's no other alternative. I'm either going to die or I'm going to achieve. And by achieving it, it may
That
not be.
is so awesome. Yeah, like no, it's the do or die attitude. It kind of reminded me of 50 Cent. Like either you do it or you die.
Oh yeah, you're either going to, there is no, I think back to, when Christopher Columbus set sail, they burned, when landed in the homelands in America, they burned the ships. They gave themselves no excuse for failure that you can't. You have nothing to go back to. So that's been a main part of my mindset for a number of years. If I would rather, and I told my wife this, I would rather do something in business and give it everything that I have and fail versus saying I want to do something and never trying and never knowing if it's a failure or a success.
Yeah, I remember the phrase from the 50 Cent, the "Get rich or die trying." The when you just talked about dying, and yeah, the ship's getting burnt. I personally believe that that's almost like a necessity if you want to succeed in anything you're doing, because you don't give yourself a plan B or a plan C. You're like, there's no cop out. You're either going to achieve your goal or you're not. But it's very few people can do that though. Like it takes a certain level of mental strength to have that attitude altogether. What would be your advice for people that don't have that mental tenacity or something, but have to develop it over a period of time?
I think a huge piece of it is reprogramming your mind. We all know when you look at a computer, there's hardware and software. I'm a true believer that our body is the hardware and the software is our mind. There's some people who say you need to listen to affirmations, you need to do all these different things. The biggest thing that I would tell people is you have to reprogram your brain. You got to listen to what you're saying. If you're telling yourself you're a failure, you are. If you tell yourself you're a success, even in moments of failure, you will rise to the occasion over time and become that success. But the other thing is, you have to hear yourself saying this over and over and over and over again with affirmations. But one other thing that's missing is people don't attach an emotion to that affirmation. If you see yourself as being this person and you live as that person before you're that person and you're enjoying the emotions that come with being in that moment. It's like getting a gift when you're a kid. If you think about the gift before you have it, you really want it, and you're thanking whoever, the universe, I'm thanking God. Thank you for this gift. I don't even have the gift, but I have the gift in my mind. Doing that for me has enabled me to get crazy things in my life, things where I shouldn't have had things pop up in my life. I had the same thing happen to me one time when I had medical expenses. I owed $20,000 because in my neck, right there, I had skin cancer that was so close to my lymphatic system that they didn't know if it was going to get into the highway of my system in 2019. They didn't know if it got into that system, then, you could be dead in the next year or two, however long that's going to take. I didn't know that. So when you have that mindset of getting through something, before it happens and being thankful, like in that case, $20,000 in medical bills. But I prayed about it and I thank God for having that long before I had it. Just so happens, literally about 3 months afterwards, I got a check in the mail for $19,000 because of a transaction that occurred. Somebody made an error or something when I sold one of my houses. There was an error and the money showed up in my mailbox. I was able to
Wow.
take that bill and wipe the slate clean. I mean, I was thankful for having something that I didn't have before I had it, and it just showed up.
Wow. That's it's it's intense, because a lot of people will just give up, just float over the weight of all these adversities, but you somehow kept going and you succeeded where most people would have just like given up. I would want my audience to have that same tenacity that you have when it comes to your business and in life in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard, and even if I didn't get the money, I would have found out a way to pay that back. I would have found out a way. I would have either worked harder and worked on more projects. Something would have came through, but I've heard that people say that you're lucky. And I've heard, lucky people, they have all these breaks and I've always believed and I've read many places that luck comes to those who are prepared. They're prepared at the right time, the right place, and they're ready to jump when they have an opportunity that's in front of them. If you're not ready and you have an opportunity, most people just turn their head and they walk away. If you're ready for the opportunity and you jump in, awesome things are going to happen for you that would not have happened if you were not ready. I don't believe in luck. I really don't.
No, I mean, I don't believe in luck either. I mean, in a certain light, yeah, if you work hard and you're working smart and you're giving it your all, sometimes the universe will throw you like conditions that will help. But yeah, in general, like God can only help you if you help yourself first. I believe I've always believed in that motto. So, Brett, you came from relatively humble beginnings to creating a seven-figure business. Like you had to fight really hard, but a lot of Americans have a fear of failure. Like they don't want to start doing a business because they're afraid of failing, or they're afraid that even worse, they have a fear of success. What would be your advice to these people if they want to start a business?
Get out of your own way and do it. Like you have nothing to lose with starting something. I mean, let's say if somebody came to you and said, "Hey, I have an idea. You can make a ton of money. You just have to come up with the money to do it." If you truly believe it in your mind, you're going to do it. You're going to come up with that money. If you don't believe in your own business, and you're not willing to do whatever it takes to create, whether you call it a side hustle or whatever you want to call it, if you don't come up with the money to do that, it's all on you. So you have to come up with the money. You got to put it into place because if you don't at least take action, and if it's a matter of starting a company, I had a conversation with somebody literally yesterday. I said, "Hey, if your son is 18 and he's worried about this, and this," I said, "Even if he starts a company and only makes a grand a year for the next 5 years," I said, "now he's got a company that's 5 years old. He made 5K, but he has some kind of credit history because now his business has been alive for 5 years. And you could buy certain things that you could write off as a business owner that you can put on a credit card that is associated with your business. You make payments on those credit cards. Now you have payment history for 5 years. And when you decide to start that, when you decide to take it to the next level in 5 years, let's say you need cash. Well, it's way easier to go to a bank and get a line, like some kind of a business line of credit or something when you have a history of making payments for 5 years versus somebody starting out. So get out of your way and just take action. If you fail, okay, you failed.
See, here's the thing, right? A lot of people have an emotional attachment to money. Like if they lose money, they freak out. It's almost like they can't handle the stress and the anxiety. But like a lot of times in business, you have to be non-attached. But most people are not non-attached when it comes to money. They have a negative association to it or a positive association. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
So money, in my opinion, is an amplifier. So I have a friend who runs a mastermind, and his name's Andrew Cordell, and he has a show that's called Money Is. And it's money is this, money is this, money is power, money is freedom. For me, money is amplification. If you are a good person at your heart, more money will amplify the things that are within your heart. If you're a bad person and you have more access to money, you become a bigger jerk. So as it comes to money, my mindset is money has this ebb and flow. It's like an ocean. Money comes in, you hold it, you redistribute it to the world, and it flows, and then it comes back to you. If you're afraid to push money back out into the world or the universe or whatever you want to call it, it's not going to come back to you because you're sitting here trying to hoard every dollar that you have versus saying, you know what? It's kind of like people say it takes money to make money. To an extent, I agree. Like you can't start making money if you don't have a company, you don't have the right structure, you don't have the right education. So I believe that it's money is the root of all evil if you have the wrong intent. I don't think money is evil. Money is a tool. That's all it is.
No, I
But
agree.
if you have a love of money, which is what I was trying to say a second ago. The love of money is the root of all evil. You can use money as a tool. There's money that's being used to support drug cartels, and there's money being used to support nonprofits that take children off the street. So my mindset is just use it and have it be this exchange that currency has a current flowing to and from. When you put the money out, have the mindset that lots of its friends are going to be coming back to you and have the expectation and have the emotional connection that that money is coming back to you and you already feel it in your heart and your mind that it's already there. Then it will come.
No, yeah, I totally agree with the fact that it's a tool and it's an amplifier. Because I know, like, there's a lot of like big business people that use it for their ego and to improve their status and just show off. Whereas there are a lot of entrepreneurs and business people that I know that want to make an impact in this world. but they need the resources to make that impact. Money is a necessary tool to create that impact. Like, especially when it comes to nonprofits, like a lot of people, like they have this negative view of money, but the reality is even these, they say that, oh, religion and money, they cannot go together. God hates money, or like it's just kind of like, a truly religious, spiritual person cannot, should not have money. Just take a look at like churches and mosques and synagogues. They need money to function. I mean, what are you talking about, man? Like somebody has to be making that money from some business or company, and they got to be donating it to that church or that synagogue or the mosque in order for that religious institution to run. It's an absolute necessity.
I agree. You can't, that's what I was saying earlier. When you have money and it amplifies your personality as a good human being that wants to make an impact in other people's lives, money helps you do that. You cannot be broke and make an impact to the truest extent in terms of the world. Yes, you can be broke and you can do whatever you can to help people out in need. I'm not saying that you can't do that in its entirety, but you have to, if you want to make a ripple on the world, you have to have a massive stone that you can throw into a pond versus little tiny pebbles.
So, like, yeah, I agree with you, but in religious circles, right? A lot of like Christian people that I noticed in America, like they are trying to do good, but they have an inherent belief that money is evil. But you see, if they didn't, but they're not able to amplify that goodness on a mass level. Like they're good people, but I feel like they should be able to amplify that. And it's that wrong understanding of what money is that's stopping them doing that. If they had that mindset that money can be used to make an impact of what they're already trying to do, then things could become much more better on a national scale and even on a global scale, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, as a Christian man, I believe that you can be wealthy in a lot of different areas in life, and you can be wealthy with money. And I know a lot of good Christian men and women who are making a great impact on the world, but it's because their mindset on money is a little different. They don't think that they have to live in poverty to try to make a difference. They believe with more resources, I can make a greater impact. And they have to strike the right balance between being wealthy in lots of areas in life, because I believe God wants us to all be wealthy in all kinds of areas. But if I don't have a cup that's full, how can I reach to somebody who has a cup that's empty and say, "Let me pour into your life," because I'm worried about what's in my cup. But when I'm giving to other people, it naturally happens. It just naturally happens that I become wealthier in numerous ways in my life.
Brett, I completely agree with you. It's just that like some people would accuse you and me of being the prosperity gospel teacher or preachers or some nonsense like that. But at the end of the day, you need resources to make an impact. More resources, more impact. It's what's in your heart. What your intent is. What are you going to utilize those resources for that ultimately make a business? There are good business people, and there are bad business people. And that's what I try to tell everybody that I talk to, because a lot of people, they end up having like a negative concept of money, and it's just like wrong, like they're hurting themselves and they're hurting all the possibilities of making the world a better place.
I
Yeah.
agree. You have to have a positive relationship with money in knowing that you can let it into your world and make it and push it back out to the world, but it's not going to be that controlling factor of your life. That's what I believe is key.
Yeah. I agree. Like I think in order to make a successful business, people have to have the right mindset on money first. Because if they have like if they think that poverty is what God wants you to do, then a lot of these good people are going to not be able to end up making like a big impact. They'll only make an impact in their family or a small circle of friends. But on a different note, Brett, they say America is the land of the free and the place where dreams are made. Do you agree or disagree with that?
So I do believe that America is the land of free. And I do think there's a lot of opportunity. I do think there's a lot of issues within this country. I believe that anybody can come here and they can work really, really hard. I think if somebody is not from America, I believe that when they have that mindset of, hey, I can achieve anything that I want to achieve, 100%, I believe it. Bring them in, let them do whatever they need to do. I think there's a lot of people in America who don't believe that anymore. The reason I believe that is because when you look at, people who are creating businesses or who are doing things in the country, they're not doing things at the way that they used to do. They don't have the same work ethic. They don't have the same mindset on business. So it's refreshing for me to see people who are not from the country come to the country and have nothing and turn this small amount of money into this massive amount of money in terms of either money or real estate assets. I know of friends who went into the country with $100 and now they own over $20 million in real estate assets. It's because
Wow.
they hustled and they were very smart with what they did. So I've seen it work. I had another gentleman come from China, same thing. His real estate portfolio is worth $50 million. And anyone in the country can do this. I think it's just as Americans, we've been ingrained with these ideas that, we're the best in all these things. We are the best in some things. There are a lot of things where the US is now lacking because our minds are not set on the things that they used to be set on from back in the days. Like some of the old school traditional things that Americans used to believe in, we don't. Or there's questions, or people are afraid that if they say the wrong thing, then someone's going to chop their head off in terms of their status. So I think that the dream is still alive. I think it's harder because as Americans, we have to take the dream and we have to revive it within our country.
No, yeah, totally. I feel like what you're saying is true. From my own personal perspective, when I came to this country, I became a naturalized citizen eventually, but I had a great appreciation for what America offers compared to a lot of the natives that actually were have were born and raised there. And I think it's because I saw the contrast. And this is I ask a lot of other of my other immigrant friends, and they told me the same thing. Like they appreciate what is there in this country and what this country has to offer, and that helps put things into perspective because you see the contrast, you see the lack of freedoms in other countries or the lack of opportunities, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to make the most of this. I'm going to take advantage. So it really comes down to a mindset. But Brett, what do you think is the biggest challenge that Americans face when it actually comes to realizing the American dream, and how would they overcome this hurdle?
I think a big thing is just realizing that they still can achieve it and that everybody's dream is different. Your dream for what you consider a success is different than mine and vice versa. The key thing to think about is just the idea of what is your dream and how big is that dream? And do not make comparisons between yourself and anybody else because you have dreams of all different sizes. Somebody could have the dream of having a job and making 60,000 a year and they want to work with kids or they want to be a whatever that is, in their mind, they are truly a success if they have achieved what they think that they need to achieve in their brain. That's the key thing. If you stay focused on that, that's in my opinion, that's the greatest thing that you can do. Whatever you attack with just a tenacity that you are gonna succeed, and if you're happy doing what you need to do, then you are a success, and your goals have been achieved, and you have the American dream. You have achieved a worthy goal.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I do hope that a lot of people have that, like they develop that mindset combined with tenacity and determination. Because you can achieve. I do believe that you can achieve whatever you set out to achieve, provided you give 100% of your efforts to it. Uh,
Mhm.
so, Brett, in America right now, over the past year, there's been a lot of inflation and a lot of people are suffering from debt. And, like wages have been stagnant in comparison to the amount of inflation that has been going on. As an entrepreneur that came from relatively humble beginnings to succeed in business, what are your thoughts on what's going on in this country in regards to inflation, debt, and stagnant wages?
I think it's making people very nervous about what they want to do. What Where I fit into this equation right now is when you look at starting a business, you have the fear of, failure. And then when you get to a point where you're successful and you're used to seeing a certain amount of success, then you have fear of success that fits into your brain. It tells you, hey, all that stuff that you work for, is it going to disappear overnight? All the things that you're going through, are you gonna be able to keep going and keep having your business be as successful as you want it? So you have to really fight. In my mind, I just have to fight the mindset that thought that keeps coming into my head saying, "Hey, wait a minute. You could lose this, and this." If you have a long-term mindset, what are things going to be like in 10 years, 5 years? That's the key in my opinion, is thinking beyond this next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years is where I'm going to be. And it's very hard to not have that mind, that little bug get into your mind saying, hey, you've achieved these things. What if people stop spending money? Like, what if they stop spending money on marketing activities on the internet? What does that mean for me? Am I going to succeed? In my mind, I tell myself every day, that doesn't mean anything. You're going to kick this right in the butt. You're going to do what you have to do. I tell my wife, if my two digital marketing agencies just vanished overnight, if I had to work for another company, okay, that's fine. I'll do it. I'll be the best employee they've ever had in terms of what I do, the absolute best, because I have the mindset of a business person. And I just think that you have to keep telling yourself those kinds of things. I look at inflation and I look at prices rising, and you can either put your head in a hole. You can be worried about what's going to happen, or you can start making moves. Um, make moves to better your life. Maybe it's education. Maybe it's taking some time right now to further, what you're learning. Maybe it can be just there's so much free education out on the internet right now. It's insane. So much free. So maybe it's getting a degree. Maybe it's learning something. Here's 2 points, interesting points. In the middle of COVID, one of my businesses lost 50% of its revenue. Massive, massive hit in 2 months. I could have
Wow.
cried and got all worried about everything. And, none of my people who I support, nobody got fired. Nobody got put on a hiatus. One person got a raise and I hired a new person. And I was there for my team wholeheartedly, didn't worry about it. And I decided, you know what? In the middle of all this, I'm going to take a class at Harvard. I'm going to get certified with one of their internet marketing classes. So
Wow.
I went to Harvard and it was one semester. It was a digital class, a certificate for digital marketing. I went in and I did it because I thought, you know what? I'm in the middle of COVID and I'm going crazy. I'm going to bang my head through the wall, just worried about all this stress. So I'm going to take a class. So I decided to take that class. And before that class had finished over that 6-week period, I decided to take a certification class from Oxford University. So I took another class that was overlapping. When the first one was ending, the second one was starting. That was another 8-week class. And it was the same thing, learning more about digital marketing. And what I learned was a lot of the stuff that I was thinking that about digital marketing as a whole was on point. But there were other things that I needed to learn that just um, got me into the mindset of how consumers were thinking. So I took that time to further educate myself in the middle of the pandemic. And I'm glad that I spent the money on myself to pay for these classes.
That is amazing, Brett. Because know like it's two themes that I noticed with a lot of entrepreneurs that make them successful. One is education, education, education. You always have to be learning. You always have to be self improving. And number two is that entrepreneurs don't ever let their circumstances dictate their lives. They'll find a way to adapt. And they'll find a solution, but they'll never, no matter how hard the circumstances are, they'll figure a way out. And that's what you demonstrated. And it's pretty amazing. Like I've talked to other successful entrepreneurs and they have similar themes, like no matter what's happening in the world or the environment or the nation, they're going to figure out a way to be successful. No matter what happens, they'll simply adapt if necessary. So that's awesome. So, so Brett, over the last so many years, there's been like a deterioration in America, especially in the financial sector, family, like breakdown of family and government. Where do you think America is headed overall, and should we be optimistic for the future?
Think if we continue to go down the path we are, we're going to be screwed. I mean, I don't see any other way. Like the family unit is being attacked in so many ways. I mean, even if you take outside of, religious mindsets, you look at things related to money, when you look at things related to sexuality, you have a lot of parents, in my opinion, whose children are dealing with lots of crazy things. Like we have children who are dealing with sexuality crisis, identity crisis. Now, anybody could be whoever they want. Okay, I'm fine with that. But providing people with options of where their sexuality is at too early of an age, in my opinion, is wrong because that person, in my opinion, is not ready to make that decision. I didn't know if I wanted to, if I'm going to be a man or a woman or whatever. I didn't have like deep rooted feelings until I was, 10, 12, 13, where I started understanding about my sexuality. Trying to give people options about all kinds of things is very hard. And kids, there's going to be an impression made on them. So I think you have parents right now who are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who are dealing with issues that they shouldn't be dealing with. Children who are cutting themselves, kids who are dealing with depression. During the middle of COVID, the rate of suicide between tweens more than doubled. It was higher than what it was for teenagers and adults. So we saw all these changes with depression and anxiety and medication increased. And I'm all about getting counseling if you need counseling. And I think counseling can be a great tool. I went through a divorce in 1999, went to counseling for a year. It was phenomenal for my life. It helped me realize things that I needed to walk away from that were impacting my life, my marriage for almost 18 years prior. So I believe that if we continue down the path that we're at, I think we're going to be in a much worse place. I do think that America needs to have awakening of looking at some of the traditional values that we believed in many years ago. I mean, a family unit, whether I don't care if the mom and dad are both working or the dads, whatever the case may be, as long as you have a family unit that is healthy and people are communicating with each other. That's why I believe, back in the days when my family, from a family of five children, we ate at the dinner table every single night. We got to be in our late teens, kind of pulled away from it a little bit because we had people in sports and things of that nature. So it was hard trying to manage five kids and have us all be at home at the same exact time because I was in wrestling, brothers were in football, soccer, all these different things. But I do believe that some of the most basic things, like spending time with family at the dinner table, having conversations, having people get away from these devices, being connected, in my opinion, you have to be able to disconnect from the matrix when you can at home and take your phones and put them up or period. And you got to get the kids to believe in these things. I have a daughter who's 13 and a son who's 9, and I'm seeing how technology is helping shape where they're at. It's interesting. I heard something just the other day about TikTok, for instance. When you look at TikTok and the algorithm that's displaying content in America versus China, very, very different. The algorithm that is displaying content in America is showing kids all this information where they're consuming more and more and more and more time on TikTok, and it's just mindless. Now, when you look at what's being shown in China, where they're only allowing the kids to be on it for, I think it's like 2 hours a day, and the information that they're showing them is related to education. And when they ask people in the United States, kids, what they want to be an influencer because they can make a lot of money. You ask
Yes.
kids what they want to do in China, they say they want to be an astronaut. Literally. And if you can think about it, regardless of anyone's political beliefs in China, America, whatever the case may be, in my opinion, coming from the tech space, if I know a platform is showcasing, and you can prove that it's showcasing data that's different in America versus their own country, I would just ask the question, why is that happening? Why is that happening?
Yeah. I mean, no, like it's totally right. I think, I think we should gear social media towards education, but with regards to like family, having the family unit together is absolutely necessary. Because it's almost like atoms and molecules, right? How are people going to have? I've talked about this with like some of my friends. Like, how are people going to have like a sense of pride and a sense of like what a nation is and be attached to the nation if they're not attached to their family and by extension their own communities, right? If you divide the family, like that's where you know where you feel that's where you feel the love, right? You know what it's like to love somebody from loving your own family members. And then through extension, it goes towards a community and then eventually to your nation. So if you divide the family, then the nation is gone automatically, it's destroyed. So I think having a family, like having the two, like a family unit, like a nuclear family, is absolutely essential for on a national level if you want to have a strong nation. So I agree with you on that
Hmm.
because it's all about like love. It's about like a healthy sense of relating to other people. It's about in order to have a functional way of relating to other people, you have to have a healthy set of like people that you can love and have like who you can show affection with and then you naturally extend that to your community.
Yeah, if you can destroy anything from within, you don't need to come. You don't need to destroy it from the outside. All you got to do is plant the seeds of doubt in terms of the family, what used to make up a family, how people would interact with families. You can take some of the best things that are related to traditional families, and a lot of people would hear me say traditional and be like, "Oh my goodness, is what's this guy talking about?" Because there's things where instead of taking the good part of traditional family and holding on to that, now it's, oh, they take the bad parts of the traditional family and they make that like that's no longer the outlier. That is the mean. And it's not. That's not the mean. The mean isn't the bad parts of traditional family. The mean was the good parts, like families being full and people being able to communicate and not having people doing things that they shouldn't do, versus having this message that's being promoted out to the community and the media. Oh, if you have a traditional family, then there's something wrong with you because these traditional views go against everything that we stand for now as a country. I think that's where we're having a lot of major issues.
It's ironic because there won't be a country if you don't have the atoms and molecules in place. You have to, in order to have a big structure, you must have the basic elemental structure. It's just like compounds. You have to have atoms and molecules. So
Mhm.
it's kind of ironic, and it's kind of sad at the same time. But
Yeah,
yeah. But on a different note, Brett, can you tell me and the audience a little bit more about SEO Outsourcing Inc. and how you got started? What was the premise of it, and all of that?
Mhm. So SEO outsourcing is actually our second company, and this brand has only been around for about 3 years. We initially started offering services out to agencies and other people who wanted to do SEO, who did like paid search or social media. That was a really good market for our business, and then we started reaching out to other businesses that wanted to do SEO directly. So it opened up a lot of doors for us in terms of being able to work either with, influencers or people who do podcasts. Anybody who wants to get additional traffic from the internet, even though it's SEO outsourcing, that's the component. We look really at algorithms, whether it is search algorithms for Google, Bing, or whether it's algorithms related to Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. Anything with an algorithm, I look at myself as really like an engineer, somebody who can deconstruct why things happen the way that they happen, and then be able to create my own construct for my clients of if we do these 10 or 100 things, we know that we're going to impact the algorithm of whatever distribution platform we're targeting. So that's really what led us into creating SEO outsourcing.
Nice. That's awesome. Uh, yeah, it's really interesting. Like the entire concept of algorithms and manipulating the system in order to get your website to the top thing. Because there's a lot of content and websites out there that are really good, but most people cannot see it because of the entire algorithm thing. So
Yeah, I like to use the word massage versus manipulate because when we get in, we make changes that need to be made.
I was
And
using it in a neutral context, but yeah, I totally
I
understand.
just I just like the way that like for me, I think in my mind, if I can get in and I can tweak the algorithm, I know that at the end of the day, that's going to help impact clients. And it's kind of like taxes. I look at the same thing with taxes. Case in point, you can either try to find loopholes, which don't exist. They're tax laws that are built into the code that you need to do to save money on taxes. It's the same thing with SEO or any other algorithm. If you abide by their code of their algorithm and their search, you're going to be able to get the results that you need by giving it what it needs. I always say, feed the 800-pound gorilla, whether that be if you feed Google, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, give them what they need, and your content is going to rise to the top.
That's awesome. I would definitely recommend my audience, and endorse you as the SEO person if they ever have like a website they need content to be put out there. And so, is there any other work that you're doing right now, Brett, that you'd want the audience to know, or like a book that you wrote, or a body of work?
So right now, what I'm looking at is I'm looking heavy into artificial intelligence. One of the things that's really big right now is AI as it relates to content. There's different content engines that are out that are helping people create content. And Google actually came out with their helpful content update, which really was created to combat content being created through AI. I'm a firm believer that if you use AI intelligently and you feed the machine correctly, you can write content that is going to fill fit a specific need. Google's main thought process in relation to its content is: are you answering questions, solving problems, pointing people in the right direction? Are you making user friendly, engaging content? I believe that you can use AI to do that as long as you have the right amount of oversight within that AI. I don't believe in just letting AI run and having content created, because I actually tested tools in the last year that did just that, and the output sucked. It really did. Wouldn't be anything that I would utilize. So that's one of the big things I'm looking into right now. Um, the other cool part is I'm actually working on my doctorate, and in my dissertation, I'm looking at it's going to be out in February of next year. And one of the things I'm adding into that is a piece on content. And I still got to get approval from the university that I'm working with to see if they will allow me to create content to describe artificial intelligent content creation by using artificial intelligence and actually having that be in the dissertation. Not as if I wrote it, but as if it was written specifically from an AI engine that they can review within that doctorate. I thought that would be a pretty cool idea.
That is awesome. That is actually, I mean, it'll go above a lot of people's heads, but yeah, it is the entire concept of artificial intelligence. It's kind of like almost like intimidating to a lot of people, but I do think it's the future eventually. It's a very interesting future because if the AI have a mind of their own, like you have all these movies like Terminator, and yeah,
Yeah, with this, the cool part is you have to tell the engine what to do, and you have to teach it. So with that content, I will literally be able to go in and tell this AI engine, I need you to write content about artificial intelligence and content creation. And if you feed the right components into the engine, it will write content that talks about what it is, how it's being used. So I'm going to create at least 1,000 words within my dissertation that will discuss what it is, and I'll let the technology describe what it is. So it's not anything artificial intelligence as it relates to some components in life, in my opinion. If you feed it correctly, you're good. Like in this case with content, there's so much content that exists that's being written via artificial intelligence or even just naturally that sucks. Google's pushing that out and it's not giving it any relevancy. But if you can use that tool just like any other tool, use it correctly, you'll be able to get really good results because you're feeding things into the tool that where Google is looking for certain kinds of content. So I'm very excited. I need to get approval to add that into that dissertation. But I think it's going to be a huge component of me being able to show people that I'm looking at the forefront of technology, not just within, SEO, but I'm looking at it across multiple platforms. And we're looking at content creation and using technology to create it. Very, very exciting.
that's awesome, Brett. So, Brett, where can our audience go to connect with you and get to know more about your work and what you're doing?
Hmm. Sorry, I was like, rip right there. SEOoutsourcing.com. Very easy. The website will go into information about what we do, how we do it. There's a lot of information about our company at SEOoutsourcing.com.
Okay, that's awesome. So, Brett, I do want to conclude this interview, and I want to let you know that you're an extraordinary American, and you're actually pretty inspirational altogether. And I would definitely want my audience to be inspired and take actions and just have the same tenacity and determination that you did when it came to the hurdles in life. And I would definitely want you to come back at a later point as a guest in the future.
I appreciate that. I hope that if anything that was said today will resonate, even if it's just with one person, then us spending this time is totally worth it. Totally worth it.
I agree. And I want to conclude this episode by letting my extraordinary Americans know that there's an extraordinary within each and every one of us, and it's our duty to unleash it and awaken it. Until next time, everybody, bye for now. Hey there, everyone. Thank you for watching Extraordinary America. If you like what you see, please do subscribe to our podcast and share it with others. Remember that the best investment that you can make in your lifetime is in your own financial education, for it is knowledge that truly sets you free. Also, remember that your purchasing power is being diluted through inflation, and then the practical thing to do is to protect the loss of your purchasing power by investing in precious metals or the right cryptocurrencies. Also, never forget that you are an extraordinary American. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.